Anton Ludwig Friedrich August Mackensen, born 6th of December 1849, died 8th of November 1945, ennobled as von Mackensen in 1899, was a German field marshal who was also voted greatest hat. Welcome to Hexes and Soldiers Historical Figures. Von Mackensen commanded successfully during the First World War of 1914 to 1918 and became one of the German Empire's most prominent and competent military leaders. After the armistice of November in 1918, the victorious Allies interned Mackensen in Serbia for a year. He retired from the army in 1920. In 1933, Hermann Goering made him a Prussian state councilor. During the Nazi era, Mackensen remained a committed monarchist and sometimes appeared at official functions in his First World War uniform. Senior NSDAP members suspected him of disloyalty to the Third Reich, but nothing was proven against him. Mackensen was born in Haus Leibnitz near the village of Dahlenberg, today part of Drossen, in the Prussian province of Saxony, to Ludwig and Marie Louise Mackensen. His father, an administrator of agricultural enterprises, sent him to a real gymnasium in Halle in 1865, seemingly in the hope that his eldest son would follow him in his profession. Mackensen began his military service in 1869 as a volunteer with the Prussian 2nd Life Hussars Regiment. During the Franco-Prussian War of 1870 to 1871, he was promoted to second lieutenant and won the Iron Cross second class for leading a charge on a reconnaissance patrol north of Orleans. After the war, he left the service and studied at Halle University, but returned to the German army in 1873 with his old regiment. He married Doris von Horn, the sister of a slain comrade, in 1879. Her father was the influential Ober-President of East Prussia, and they had 2 daughters and 3 sons. In 1891, Mackensen was appointed to the General Staff in Berlin, bypassing the usual 3-year preparation in the War Academy. His chief, Helmut von Moltke, found him a lovable character. He was recalled from the regiment to serve as an adjutant to the next chief, Alfred von Schlieffen, whom he regarded as a great instructor on how to lead armies of millions. He impressed Kaiser Wilhelm II, who ordered that Mackensen be given command from the 17th of June 1893 of the 1st Life Hussars Regiment, to which he became à la suite when he left its command on 27th of January 1898, and so he often wore the distinctive Death's Head uniform thereafter. Mackensen was surprised by his next posting as adjutant to Wilhelm II because he was the first commander to hold that position. For the next 3.5 years, he shadowed the Kaiser, meeting the high and mighty of Germany, the rest of Europe, and the Middle East. His sons shared gymnastics classes with the Kaisers. He was ennobled on the Kaiser's 40th birthday, 27th of January 1899, becoming August von Mackensen. Next, he received the command of the newly created Life Hussar Brigade from 1901 to 1903, and from 1903 to 1908, he commanded the 36th Division in Danzig. His wife died in 1905, and 2 years later, he married Leonie von der Osten, who was 22 years old. When Schlieffen retired in 1906, Mackensen was considered as a possible successor, but the position went to Helmuth von Moltke the Younger in 1908. Mackensen was given command of the 17th Army Corps, headquartered in Danzig. The Crown Prince was placed under his command, and the Kaiser asked Mackensen to keep an eye on the young man and to teach him to ride properly. Already aged 65 at the outbreak of war in 1914, Mackensen's 17th Army Corps became part of the German 8th Army in East Prussia under General Maximilian von Prittwitz, and 21 days later, under General Paul von Hindenburg, Mackensen had his corps moving out on a 25-kilometer march to the Romante River within 50 minutes of receiving his orders on the afternoon of 19th August 1914, after the Imperial Russian Army invaded East Prussia. He led the 17th Corps in battles of Gombinnen, Tannenberg, and the First Battle of the Masurian Lakes, which drove the invading Russians out from most of East Prussia. On the 2nd of November 1914, Mackensen took over command of the 9th Army from Hindenburg, who became Supreme Commander East. On the 27th of November 1914, Mackensen was awarded the Pour le Mérite, Prussia's highest military order, for successful battles around Lodz and Warsaw. By April 1915, the Russians had conquered all of western Galicia, the Austro-Hungarian partitioned Poland, and they were pushing toward Hungary. In response to the desperate pleas, the German Supreme Commander Erich von Falkenhayn agreed to an offensive against the Russian flank by an Austro-German army under a German commander. The reluctant Austro-Hungarian Supreme Command agreed that the tactful Mackensen was the best choice for commanding the coalition army. Army Group Mackensen was established, containing a new German 11th Army also under his command, and the Austro-Hungarian 4th Army. As Chief of Staff, he was assigned Hans von Seeckt, who described Mackensen as an amiable, quote, hands-on commander with the instincts of a hunter, end quote. His army group, which had an overwhelmingly advantage in artillery, smashed through the Russian lines between Gorlice and Tarnow and then continued eastward. Never giving the Russians time to establish an effective defense, it retook most of eastern Galicia by recapturing Przemysl and Lemberg. The joint operation was a great victory for the Central Powers, which had advanced 310 kilometers, or 186 miles, and the Russians pulled out of all of Poland soon afterward. Mackensen was awarded oak leaves to his Pour l'Emery on the 3rd of June 1915 and promoted to Field Marshal on the 22nd of June. He also received the Order of the Black Eagle, Prussia's highest ranking order of knighthood, as well as numerous honors from other German states and Germany's allies, including the Grand Cross of the Military Order of Max Joseph, the highest military honor of the Kingdom of Bavaria, on the 4th of June in 1915. In October of 1915, a new army group, Mackensen, launched a renewed campaign against Serbia. The campaign crushed effective military resistance in Serbia, but failed to destroy the Serbian army, half of which managed to withdraw to Entente-held ports in Albania, and, after recuperation and rearmament by the French and the Italians, re-entered fighting on the Macedonian front. When Mackensen returned to Vienna, he was honored by a dinner and a personal audience with Emperor Franz Joseph, and he was decorated with the magnificently jeweled Military Merit Cross First Class with diamonds, a unique award for a foreigner. Von Mackensen appears to have had great respect for the Serbian army and Serbians generally. Before departing to the Serbian front in 1915, he had spoken to his men saying, "You are not going to the Italian, Russian, or French front. You are going into battle against a new enemy, dangerous, tough, fearless, and sharp. You are going to the Serbian front and Serbia. Serbs are people who love their freedom and who will fight to the last man. Be careful this small enemy does not cast a shadow on your glory and compromise your success." After Romania declared war on Austria-Hungary on the 15th of August 1916, Mackensen was given command of a multinational army with General Emil von Hell as chief of staff of Bulgarians, Ottomans, Austro-Hungarians, and Germans. They assembled in northern Bulgaria and then advanced into Dobruja. By 8th of December, they had taken the two major forts on the right bank of the Danube, the first in a single day by a force that was outnumbered by the besieged, who were overwhelmed by Mackensen's artillery. Then a German and Austro-Hungarian army group commanded by Falkenhayn broke into Wallachia through the Vulcan Pass and the Transylvanian Carpathian Mountains, while Mackensen crossed the Danube by seizing bridgeheads on the left bank to shield the Austro-Hungarian engineers who built the long pontoon bridge. The Romanian army and its Russian allies were forced back between these pincers. After 3 months of war, two-thirds of the territory of the Kingdom of Romania was occupied by the Central Powers. The capital city of Romania, Bucharest, was captured by the Central Powers on the 6th of December 1916 on his 67th birthday. He rode in on a white horse and moved into the Romanian royal palace. For that performance, on the 9th of January 1917, Mackensen was awarded the Grand Cross of the Iron Cross, becoming one of only 5 recipients of this honor in the First World War. Since he now wore every Prussian medal, the Kaiser decided to become a battle cruiser after him, which became the first in a new class. Mackensen became the military governor of the large part of Romania, mainly Wallachia, that was occupied by the Central Powers. He proposed making a German prince the king of Romania, but the initiative fell through. His last campaign was an attempt to destroy the Romanian army, which had been reorganized after the Kerensky offensive. During the Battle of Marasesti, both sides took heavy losses, but the Romanian army emerged victorious. Mackensen maintained that he had never been defeated in battle, and he surely was the most consistently successful senior general on either side in World War I. By December of 1917, the Russian army had collapsed, and Romania was forced to sign the Armistice of Fosani, followed by the Treaty of Bucharest. After the armistice, he and the 200,000 men whom he led back home were rounded up in Hungary by General Louis François d'Espery's Allied army by its Serbian units, and he was held as a military prisoner in Serbia until November of 1919. He was one of the 896 Germans on the Allied list of accused war criminals, which eventually was allowed to lapse. By 1920, Mackensen retired from the army, although standing in opposition to the conclusion of the Treaty of Versailles and the newly established parliamentary system of the Weimar Republic. He initially avoided public campaigns. Around 1924, he changed his mind and began to use his image as a war hero to support right-wing monarchist and nationalist groups. He routinely appeared in his old life hussar's uniform and became very active in pro-military conservative revolutionary movement organizations, particularly Der Stahlhelm and the Schlieffen Society, advocating the stab-in-the-back myth and openly endorsing the murder of Minister Matthias Erzberger in 1921. During the German presidential election of 1932, Mackensen supported Paul von Hindenburg against Adolf Hitler, whose political skills he nevertheless admired. After Hitler gained power in January of 1933, Mackensen became a visible, if only symbolic, supporter of the Nazi regime. One of his ceremonial visits brought him to Passau, where he received a hero's welcome. Occasionally mocked as the Reich centerpiece, Mackensen's distinctive public profile in his black Life Hussars uniform was even recognized by the Hauser Elstolen Company, which produced a 7-centimeter figure of him in its line of Elstolen composition soldiers. His fame and familiar uniform gave rise to two separate Third Reich units adopting black dress, with the Totenkopf Brigades, the Panzerwaffe, which claimed the tradition of the Imperial Cavalry, and the Schutzstaffel. In October of 1935, the government vested Mackensen with the Brandenburg Demesne of Brusau in recognition of his merits. Mackensen's relationship to the Nazis remained ambiguous. Embodying the Prussian traditions adopted by Hitler's regime, he appeared in his black uniform at public events and organized by the German government or the Nazi Party, such as the Day of Potsdam on the 21st of March 1933. On the other hand, he objected to the killing of Generals Ferdinand von Bredau and Kurt von Schleicher during the Night of the Long Knives purge of July 1934, to the Nazi Kirchenkampf measures against the confessing church, and to the atrocities committed during the invasion of Poland in September of 1939. By the early 1940s, Hitler and Joseph Goebbels suspected Mackensen of disloyalty, but refrained from taking action. Mackensen remained a committed monarchist and in June of 1941 appeared in full imperial uniform at Kaiser Wilhelm's funeral at Doorn in the Netherlands. According to a radio news report dated 15th of April 1945, filed by CBS News correspondent Larry Lassour for World News Today, Mackensen was briefly captured by the British Second Army at his home during the closing weeks of the Second World War. Upon the arrival of the British, apparently not commenting whatsoever on the general rout, the 95-year-old Mackensen merely asked the news powers that, quote, freed foreign workers, end quote, be prevented, quote, from stealing his chicken, end quote. Mackensen died on the 8th of November 1945 at the age of 95, his life having spanned the Kingdom of Prussia, the North German Confederation, the German Empire, the Weimar Republic, the Third Reich, and the post-war Allied occupation of Germany. He was buried in the Cell Cemetery. This has been Historical Figures, brought to you by Hexes and Soldiers. Thank you for listening.